Costa Rica is one of the most beautiful countries in the world, but most people make the same mistakes and settle for an okay vacation instead of an unforgettable one. Hey, I'm Peligro with Peligro Life, and today we're giving you the ultimate guide to Costa Rica in 2026. I see it all the time. People try to cram way too much into their trip, underestimate the drive times, fly to the wrong airport, or choose the wrong region for the things that fit their travel style. In the end, their vacation is less time doing what they want to do and more time spent in crowds and dealing with stress. After living here for 7 years, I've learned a thing or two, and in this video, we're going to go over what actually matters in 2026, as well as tell you the honest truth on things like safety, the best places to visit, and the reality of prices. And later, I'll give you everything you need to create your own 7 to 10 day itinerary that's different from the typical tourist playbook. But before we get to beaches and volcanoes, let's make sure you land prepared. Here are some tips you should know before you get on the plane. Now, you'll be thinking about the things like what to pack, do I have my passport, but these are the tips that most people forget or don't realize they need. And it's way easier to do from the comfort of your own home than trying to cram it in on the airport Wi-Fi. Let your phone do the heavy lifting for you. Download an eSIM before you leave. You can still get a physical one here if you need it, but it's way more of a hassle. When I travel, I typically use Airlo because it's cheap and easy, but there's a ton of different options out there. The address system here isn't what you're used to. Save yourself the headache, download Waze because that's what everybody uses here, and it can even help you predict the traffic conditions. As a backup, download Google's offline maps just in case service gets a little spotty. If you don't already have it, download WhatsApp. This is how everyone communicates in Costa Rica, including hotels, guides, and tour agencies. It's definitely a must. Another smart idea is to take a picture of your passport or have a digital copy stored somewhere on the cloud, just in case something happens. These last two are optional, but worth knowing about. Travel insurance is nice to have and can give good peace of mind, but coming from the United States, the medical care here is way cheaper even without insurance. If you want to make sure you arrive with Costa Rican cash, the best thing you can do is order some colones from your local bank at home. However, if you don't have that option, you can still come here and go to any bank's ATM and get the best exchange rate. The worst exchange rate is in the airport, but most places here also accept credit cards and United States dollars. I know this isn't the sexy part of the video, but these tips can save you major headaches. All right, now let's talk about an important decision that can completely shape your trip. Which airport should you fly into? If you didn't know, there are two major airports in Costa Rica and they're located in completely different places. So this decision matters. The first is Juan Santa Maria. This is often referred to as the San Jose Airport, even though it's not technically located in San Jose. This is in the middle of the country and a great jumping off spot if you're going to go to the Caribbean, La Fortuna, the Central Pacific, and anywhere down south. The only major downside to this airport is the traffic surrounding it. It can take a long time to get out of the city, and that's why I recommend staying your first night and especially your last night somewhere near the airport. That way, you know without question you're going to make your return flight home. The second is the Daniel Olubarquieros Airport, commonly referred to as the Liberia Airport. It's much smaller and easier to get in and out of. It's also much closer to the incredible beaches of Guanacaste, but not the place you want to choose if you're trying to get to the Caribbean side. If money's not an issue, you can always take a domestic flight from any one of these international airports to one of the many regional airports all throughout Costa Rica. No matter which airport you fly into, you should be prepared for immigration with these things. Without a doubt, they're going to ask you for your address. This doesn't have to be your full itinerary. They just want to know the address of the first place you're staying, so it's a good idea to keep that on hand. If you have a more strict immigration officer, they're going to ask for an exit ticket out of the country. Save yourself the headache, take a picture or have an email confirmation of your return flight home, and you'll be good to go. Once you're free and clear, as you walk out the airport, you will be bombarded by taxi drivers wanting to take you to your next stop. If you're cheap like me, you can always call an Uber. But if you're in the San Jose airport, just realize you have to walk outside, cross the street, and then go up to the second level where they allow the Uber drivers to pick people up. But this is just one of many ways to get around Costa Rica. So let's talk transportation. If you're planning on driving here, be aware that Google Maps might lie to you. I can remember multiple times where Google said, hey, go this way, it's a shortcut. And the next thing I knew, I was on an ATV path or crossing rivers. One thing people always talk about is how bad the roads are here. I've been on some of the freeways and it's actually quite nice, assuming there's no traffic. It's really once you get into the small towns or the back roads that things start to get a little bit wild and you might want a higher clearance vehicle or a 4x4. I do have a separate video all about driving in Costa Rica in case you want more details. The other option is to have someone drive you. There's a ton of great private drivers and shuttle options out there. You just have to find them. If you want to save a little money, take a bus. Just realize they're kind of slow, and if you have a lot of luggage, it might not be the best fit. The most important thing to understand is that no matter how you get around, prepare yourself for it to take a little bit longer than you think. Here, people measure distances in time and not the actual distance itself. For example, if you're traveling from San Jose to Jaco about 100 kilometers, you'd think, oh, that's like a little over an hour. Typically, it takes people 2 hours or more. And now, with the construction on the Tarcolis Bridge, it can take 6 to 7 hours just to go 100 kilometers. These are the major factors that influence drive time. So pay attention and plan your route accordingly. Traffic. You have heard me talk about this plenty, but until you experience, you will never truly understand how painful it can be. The solution? Don't drive during rush hour. Here, between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. during weekdays is the absolute worst time to be driving through a major city. So plan your trips for the weekends, in the mornings, or after 7 p.m. Mother Nature. You may have heard that Costa Rica has rainforest. This means that it can start pouring anytime, anywhere, and road conditions can change quickly. Sometimes roads are completely flooded. Other times landslides wash over the entire highway and you're stuck waiting. My tip, find a nice restaurant, wait it out comfortably, and jump back in once you see the cars moving. The roads. Most are windy and don't have that many options to pass. All it takes is one super slow truck or car, and the next thing you know, you're stuck at a snail's pace on the freeway. At this point, there's not a whole lot you can do. Take a deep breath and enjoy the nature around you. And that's why choosing the right region matters. Costa Rica is small, but it's not fast. So let me break down the regions quickly so you can figure out what works for your style. Costa Rica isn't one experience. It's multiple climates and cultures, all packed into one country. Here's my take on the different regions. The Northwest and Guanacaste. This part of Costa Rica is dry, sunny, has tons of surf towns, big resorts, and big beaches. Some of the more popular stops are Tamarindo, Nosara, Samara, Flamingo, and Conchal. You're also close to national parks like Rincon de la Vieja, Tenorio, and can even squeeze in a visit to Arenal volcano. Here, it's really easy to find Western luxuries like AC and hot water. Just be prepared for more tourists and less of a local vibe, especially in places like Tamarindo. In the northern central mountains, you have two incredible gems that bring in people from all over the world. La Fortuna. This is where adventure and relaxation collide in the best way possible. You are in the true rainforest with zip lining, rafting, hot springs, and waterfalls. And of course, Arenal volcano. Monteverde Cloud Forest is an incredible experience in nature, and you might actually feel cold in Costa Rica. There's a bunch of different protected areas where you can go hiking to see wildlife, like the quetzal. And we'll talk more about wildlife in a minute, just know these areas are great for it. The Central Pacific. About 2 hours from San Jose, this is one of the easiest places to get to and has a bit of everything. Jaco is centrally located, has beaches, nightlife, and plenty of food and adventure options. Right next door is Herradura, which has a really calm beach and a marina in case you want to get out and go on a fishing charter. Further south, you can find towns like Quepos, which is right next to the famous Manuel Antonio National Park. While the park does get busy, it's famous for its wildlife and incredible beaches. This area also has some really good restaurants and nice places to stay. I also like to check out Uvita because this is a natural vibe and you can even go out to the Whale's Tail Beach on low tide. The Southern Zone. This is where things get remote and wild. Think of the incredible nature that you can see at Corcovado National Park or at Drake Bay. For surfers, there's world-class waves here, including the insanely long left at Pavones. The towns here are a little bit smaller, but they have an authentic Costa Rican vibe. Puerto Jimenez is probably the biggest town, and it only has a population of about 13,000 people. It does take a little bit longer to get here by car, making the regional airports key if you want to save time on travel. If you're looking to get away from the city and immerse yourself in nature, this is the spot you have to check out. And now for one of my favorites, the Caribbean side. It has a completely different feel, different culture, and different rainfall patterns. Up in the north, you have the famous canals and sea turtles of Tortuguero. To the south, you can find Cahuita, one of the best national parks in the country. There's beaches, animals, and even snorkeling. Just above Panama, there's a cluster of beautiful beach towns that stretch from Puerto Viejo all the way down to Manzanillo. Each has their own charm, and spending a few days to explore the area is completely worth it. These are just a few of the major spots people go for tourism. The truth is, there's something amazing everywhere in Costa Rica, and it's impossible to see it all in one trip, let alone 7 years of living here. The biggest mistake I see, trying to combine regions that aren't even close to each other. So how do you plan a 7 to 10 day trip without feeling rushed? Here's the formula. I wouldn't recommend a weekend trip to Costa Rica because you'd spend most of your time getting in and out of the airport. Instead, 7 to 10 days seems to be the sweet spot. The first thing you need to do is plan out the vibe and adventures that you're looking for. Then you can pick 2 to 3 regions that match that. Do not, I repeat, do not overdo it. The more you move around, the more time you lose to being stuck inside a car instead of relaxing on a beach. Instead of trying to see it all, picking 2 to 3 spots allows you to really get to know those areas and relax a whole lot more. Expect travel days to take at least half the day. There's just too many variables on the road, and 90% of the time, it's gonna take longer than you think. And unless you're crazy, don't try and cross the Pacific coast to the East Coast in one day. That takes at least 9 hours of driving, and honestly, it's just miserable. Plan a logical route where you don't have to backtrack or zigzag. Remember, you don't have to see everything. You'll enjoy more by doing less. We all have that one person in the family that tries to plan every minute of the vacation. That doesn't work here, and it's a good thing. Also, make sure you have some free time in there to go on random adventures and enjoy the Pura Vida lifestyle. Some of my favorite adventures come from spontaneous decisions where we had nothing planned. Lastly, stay somewhere close to the airport on your last night. There's nothing worse than feeling like you're gonna miss your flight while you're stuck in traffic, especially if it's early in the morning. If you want help mapping that out for your dates and travel style, I've opened up one-on-one planning calls to help people answer their specific questions. There's a link in the description, but now let's talk about money, because in Costa Rica, it surprises a lot of people. Costa Rica is the most expensive country in Central America. I still find it's cheaper than the United States, but it's not as cheap as places like Nicaragua and Guatemala. With that said, it's stable here, and you can find most modern luxuries. Here's the rundown on the things you need to know so you can plan your budget accordingly. When you go to the store to buy something, the listed price should already include the 13% sales tax. When you go out to eat, things can be a little bit different. Most places will already include the 13% sales tax as well as the 10% service fee. However, it's getting more and more common in places like Tamarindo that the price doesn't include these two things, and they post a sign telling you that that's going to be charged separately. Tipping here is pretty easy. 10% is the standard, and it's already included on your bill at restaurants. This also applies to guided tours like hiking in a national park or your fishing charters. It's okay to tip somebody more if you think they did an exceptional job. Just be careful not to create an unsustainable tipping culture for the locals. Costa Rica charges a lot more on imported goods. So something like a pineapple is going to be cheap, but an apple is going to cost a lot more. The same applies to things like electronics, sunscreen, and bug spray. So those things are better to bring from home. Here's a breakdown of what things typically cost in US dollars. Fresh fruit smoothies and sodas are typically $3 to $5. National beer, that's also $3 to $5. Craft beer is a little more expensive at $6 to $8. If you want a cocktail, that's around $8 to $12.
If you go to a local restaurant like a soda, those are typically around $8 to $12. But most other restaurants are $15 to $20 per plate. Normal adventures like national parks and zip lining are between $15 and $100. Higher end trips like fishing or rafting can cost $100 to over $200 a person. For rental cars, it's all about what you choose, but after taxes and insurance, $35 a day is awesome and up to $100 is normal. For lodging, a modest place with AC and hot water showers will cost around $100 to $200 a night. Here's the big picture. For a family of 4 staying comfortably, having a rental car, and adventures every day, it's going to cost about $3,000 to $4,000 for 10 days, not including your flights. Of course, you could always do a budget version where you cook your own meals, stay at Airbnbs, go on free adventures, and that's likely to set you back $2,000 for the same 10 days. In the end, I do think Costa Rica is worth it even though its neighbors are a little cheaper. It's stable, has good infrastructure, incredible conservation, and despite what you hear on the news, I feel safe here, which is a good transition to talk about safety. Yes, crime headlines have increased. In the last year, the US State Department bumped Costa Rica from a level 1 travel advisory to a level 2. With that said, most of the serious crime against foreigners involves 2 key things: drugs and shady people. If your trip doesn't include those things, you're off to a good start, but that doesn't mean you can let down your guard. Petty theft here is really common, so here's some tips on how to avoid becoming a victim. Take care of your valuables. Never leave them in a locked car or out in the open on the beach. If thieves can't see the score, they're more likely to move on and you'll be safe. Avoid illegal activities and the sketchy people offering them to you. Just like back home, there's places you wouldn't want to walk alone at night, and hotel staff is really helpful at pointing you in the right direction. If you do have an emergency, 911 works here as well. Something else people often overlook is water safety. First off, the water is safe to drink here in most places, so you don't need to use 100 bottles while you're here. But swimming comes with its own set of risks. Unless you know for sure, assume that any rivers near an ocean might have crocodiles in them. Also, swimming in the ocean can be dangerous if you're not used to spotting rip currents. Fortunately, Costa Rica has beefed up their presence of lifeguards on popular beaches, but you should still stay within your skill level when entering the ocean. Costa Rica is no different than anywhere else in the world. If you use your common sense, you should be fine. Now, let's move on to wildlife expectations. Costa Rica isn't a zoo. In fact, in 2013, they passed a law protecting wild animals from being put in cages for entertainment. There are still animal rescue centers around, but the last 2 state-run zoos officially closed in 2024. If you want to see animals, you don't have to go too far. Costa Rica has 5% of the world's biodiversity, meaning if you want to see something cool like a monkey or toucan, it might just come by your hotel and say hi. If you're going out looking for animals, you need to leave the big city. National parks are always a good option, and hiring a guide is going to increase your chances of seeing animals. My favorite national parks are Corcovado, Calfuita, Manuel Antonio, and Arenal. I recommend going to the park as soon as it opens to beat the crowds, and park entrance tickets can sell out, so check availability and book early on Synac's website. Not all the animals here are as comfortable around humans as the coatis and monkeys. Some are more camouflaged and reclusive, but if you move slowly and stop often, you'll be surprised by what comes out. If you're up for a real adventure, you have to check out a night hike. The night shift is full of strange animals. Something else to keep in mind is that animals like sea turtles, whales, and quetzals have seasons in specific habitats. You need to do your research to show up at the right time in the right place. The wildlife is incredible here, and just like they have seasons, so does the weather. So when should you come? Most people will tell you there's a dry season between December and April, and a wet or a green season between May and November. It's a good generalization, but rain can happen anytime and anywhere. The dry season does tend to be a little more sunny and is when the majority of tourists arrive. Hotspots like Jaco and Tamarindo can get crowded, and this is usually when Airbnbs raise their prices. The green season is also a great time to come and visit. Sure, it might rain in the afternoons or mornings, but at some point in the day, the sun's likely to come out. What I like is that there's less crowds, places are easier to find, and Airbnbs don't charge those high prices. On the Caribbean side, things are different. My favorite time to visit Puerto Viejo is late September, early October because the ocean is flat, the water is clear, and animals are everywhere. Shoulder seasons like April and December are a great time to get a mix of everything. Just take into account the 3 busiest times for local tourism. It's fun to be part of the action, but everybody from the city goes to the beach to celebrate their beautiful country. Semana Santa, also known as Holy Week. This usually happens in April and it's the equivalent of spring break. A week long of families, buses, everybody coming down to the beach and having a great time. On New Year's, you'll see amateur fireworks going off everywhere, and it's really cool to see all the bonfires lit on the beach. Costa Rica's Independence Day is on September 15th. There's parades and celebrations everywhere. It's a fun time to be in the country, but this can really jam up traffic and it's not a time that you want to travel. In all honesty, there's not a bad time to visit Costa Rica, just different experiences. Costa Rica rewards people who slow down, plan smart, and stay flexible. It's full of blue zones, friendly people, beautiful nature, and some of the best views on Earth. You really have to try hard to have a bad time. Keeping an open mind and realistic expectations will help set you up for success. And please, help break the bad gringo stereotype. Be respectful and adapt to the Pura Vida lifestyle. This guide is a great start, but I have tons of videos on specifics like national parks and some of Costa Rica's most famous regions. Leave your questions in the comments, and if you want to meet virtually to plan a custom vacation, check the link in the description. Once you visit Costa Rica, you'll see why it's one of the top vacation destinations in the world. Thanks for hanging out with Peligro Life. Stay wild.